It was supposed to be just another ordinary Sunday, with family lunch, laughter on the porch, and that peace that seemed to live in her heart. But that day, something was different. It wasn't the smell of the food or her husband's silence that bothered her. It was a hunch, a tightness in her chest that she couldn't explain, as if your soul was silently screaming for help. And she knew something was wrong. They had been married for over 12 years. Together they built a home, life, dreams, and plans. She met him when she was still young, when she believed that love was enough to sustain a marriage. But over time, the routine got boring, the looks got lost, and the beautiful words disappeared. Even so, she remained there, firm, for love, for respect, and mainly because she believed that promises made before God were not easily broken. But that distant look in his eyes, the hidden messages, the mysterious calls at 3 in the morning, all of this was silently eating away at her heart. On the outside, she was smiling. On the inside, she was falling apart. She spent entire nights awake, wondering what she had done wrong, if she was no longer beautiful, if she was no longer enough. And the more she tried to understand, the more the pain grew, until one day, by accident, or perhaps by fate, she saw a simple message on his cell phone, but one that changed everything. "I'm scared. My period is late." It wasn't hers. It belonged to another woman. A woman she didn't even know who she was, but who perhaps carried a part of the man she shared her life with. She felt the ground disappear. Her stomach churned. The world spun. She was being betrayed, and worse. There was the possibility of a child involved, a child that wasn't hers, a child that could destroy everything she had built with so much effort. But she didn't scream. She didn't make a fuss. She swallowed her pain, as she always did, and she waited. She waited for the truth to knock on the door, like a storm that we see on the horizon, but can't stop it from arriving. And when it finally arrived, she heard from his mouth what she already knew. Yes, he had someone else. Yes, she was pregnant. And no, he didn't know what to do. From that moment on, everything changed. She had to make decisions that no woman should ever have to make, choosing between pride and forgiveness, between hurt and love, between pain and compassion. And what she did, no one expected. This story is real. It's about courage, pain, and a choice that divided opinions, but that only she could make. And now, she's going to tell it herself, in her own words, in the most human and truthful way possible. But before we continue, stop for a moment and think, what would you do if you were in her place? Would he raise his lover's child? Would he forgive her? Would he leave? Comment below with sincerity, because this story will still touch your heart. This type of story touches you. Leave a like and subscribe. You won't want to miss what comes next.
Hello, my name is Helena. I'm 38 years old, and to this day I wonder if I was strong or just too foolish. When I found out my husband had an affair, I didn't cry. Not at that exact moment. It was as if my entire body had frozen, as if my heart had stopped beating for a few seconds while my mind tried to understand what was happening. I stood still, staring at that message on his phone screen. "I'm scared. My period is late." Those words kept echoing in my head. They weren't meant for me, and that hurt more than any punch in the stomach. I'm not the kind of woman who checks her phone. I've always trusted. Maybe that's why it hurt so much. We've been married for 12 years. 12. I've endured a lot. Financial crises, cold nights, harsh words, invisible distances. But betrayal? Betrayal is a wound that never heals. It's like our soul cracks, like something inside us is broken and never gets whole again. That night, I waited for him to fall asleep and sat on the bathroom floor. In silence, shrunken, wondering where I went wrong. If I stopped being beautiful, desirable. If I loved too much, or too little. I turned our lives over in my head, trying to find the exact moment when he started to pull away from me. But I couldn't find it. Because the truth is that betrayals don't happen overnight. They start little by little, in glances that look away, in apologies that are repeated, in silences that scream. The next day, I faced him. Without yelling. Without crying. I just asked, "Are you cheating on me?" He hesitated. He lowered his eyes, and after a few seconds of cowardice, he confirmed it. He said he was confused, that he didn't know how it happened, that it was a mistake, but the worst was yet to come. I asked if it was true that she was pregnant. He froze. He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. And in that silence, I heard my life falling apart, every promise broken, every dream in ruins. A lover, a pregnancy, a lie. And there I was, with my heart torn apart, having to take a deep breath to keep from falling to the ground. The pain I felt that week is indescribable. I cried in the shower, hiding. I wiped my face before leaving the room. Pretending that everything was fine became my greatest torture. And yet, I didn't leave. I needed to think. I needed to understand what I was going to do with my life, with my dignity, with this child who, somehow, was already mixed up in my destiny. The days dragged on, and each one seemed heavier than the last. But the worst was yet to come. He asked me for help. He said that his lover wanted to have an abortion, that she was scared, alone, and that she didn't want the baby. I was speechless. He asked me, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, to talk to her, to the woman who destroyed my marriage. What was I supposed to say? "Hi, honey, don't kill my husband's child, I'll raise him for you." But that's exactly what I ended up doing. I still don't understand how I found the strength. Maybe it was out of compassion, maybe it was instinct, or maybe I just wanted to do the right thing, even though I was in a whirlwind of feelings. I arranged to meet her. I was shaking from head to toe, but I went. And when I saw that girl, because yes, it was a girl, barely 22 years old, crying, afraid, scared, something inside me broke. I felt anger, hatred, the urge to scream. But I also felt pain for her, and for that baby who was not to blame for anything. The conversation was short but heavy. She told me that she didn't want the child, that she wasn't ready. That if she had known before that he was married, she would have left. I don't know if I believed her, but I know that there, in that conversation, my decision began to be born. I returned home in silence. My heart was in pieces, and I lay in the empty room, staring at the ceiling. I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. But I also knew that a life was at stake, and that, no matter how absurd the situation was, I couldn't turn my back. Do you think I was crazy? Weak? Would you have the courage to do the same? Tell me in the comments, because sometimes I don't know what to think about myself. If this story has touched you so far, like the video, share it, and stay with me. Because what comes next is even harder to believe. The next morning, I didn't know if I had slept or if I had just spent the night with my eyes closed, trying to escape reality. I woke up with a pain in my chest that felt physical, the kind of pain that makes you lose your appetite, that takes away the flavor of things, that turns the air into heaviness. I stared in the mirror and asked myself, is this really what you're going to do, Helena? Raise your husband's mistress's child? Have you lost your mind? Maybe I had, but deep down, I knew that if I didn't do anything, I would regret it forever. I called my husband to talk. I sat on the couch, looked him in the eyes, and said, "If you don't want this child, if she doesn't want this child, then I do." He was speechless. He looked at me as if I had spoken in another language. Then he stood up, paced back and forth, and said it was crazy, that no one would understand. And I replied, "I'm not worried about what other people will think. I'm worried about this child who didn't ask to be born into this mess." And then, for the first time in a long time, I saw a little respect in his eyes. Not love, maybe, but respect. There were days and days of conversations, with him, with her, with myself. It wasn't easy. I'm not a saint. I felt anger, disgust, jealousy, revolt. I felt like running away, disappearing, destroying everything. But something inside me told me that if I let that child be discarded as a mistake, I would be making a mistake too. She agreed to continue with the pregnancy, on the condition that she would not have any connection with the baby, and so it was done. I started attending prenatal care. I took her to appointments. I helped with the layette. Every time I bought a new outfit, I cried in the car. It wasn't my child, but it was going to be. Somehow, it was going to be. People started to comment. My family didn't understand. Some friends distanced themselves. Others called me crying, saying that I was giving up on myself, that I was being humiliated. But no one understood what was going on inside. I didn't really understand, either. I just felt like I was doing what my heart told me to do. The months passed. The pregnancy was uneventful. And on the day of the birth, I was there. I held her hand. I saw that baby boy being born. And I cried like I had never cried before in my life. A cry of pain, of relief, of fear, of love. A cry that was a mix of everything. When they placed him in my arms, I trembled. He was small, warm, innocent. And I knew, from that moment on, he was mine. She signed the papers, making it official that she was giving up her rights. I filed for custody and later adoption. The biological father, my husband, legally acknowledged the child, but was never really involved. And me, I became a mother from day one. The sleepless nights returned, but now for a different reason. Every feeding, every fever, every cry. I was there. And little by little, love grew. Because love is not automatic. It is not magic. It is construction. It is a daily choice. But don't think that everything turned into a fairy tale. I was still married to a man who had cheated on me. And no matter how much I tried to forgive him, something between us had died. He was trying to make amends, but I could see the discomfort, the guilt, the distance in his eyes. And maybe he saw the same thing in my eyes. We were two strangers trying to pretend that there was still an us. Motherhood fulfilled me in a way I never expected. That boy, who was born from betrayal, became the center of my life. And, as absurd as it may seem, he also became my cure. Because when I looked at him, I saw purity. Not the mistake, but the chance to start over. Those were difficult years. The weight of judgment was constant. Many times I heard, "That one is crazy. She raised her lover's child." Once, a woman in the market whispered loudly to another, "I would never do that. How embarrassing." I smiled. I didn't answer. Because those who carry the cross know how heavy it is, but they also know the value of the faith that sustains it. If you've made it this far, I ask you, could you love a child born from betrayal? Would you have the courage to embrace such pain and transform it into love? Tell me in the comments, because I still wonder if I'm brave or just someone who clung to the only thing that could give meaning to my life in that chaos. If this part moved you, leave a like, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and stay with me. Because what happened next will move you even more. Life went by. I learned how to be a mother the hard way. Waking up in the middle of the night, getting the temperature of the shower wrong, crying in the bathroom when tiredness seemed greater than love. But I kept going. One day after another, the baby grew up. And with him, my sense of justice grew too. I began to realize that I could no longer sustain a marriage that only existed on paper. My husband, or ex-husband, because that's what I started calling him in my head, was barely home. Affection became an obligation. Touch became an absence. And his gaze no longer sought me out. I tried. I swear I tried. For the boy, for the story, for the shame of failing. But there came a point when I understood. Staying in that, marriage was like teaching my son that love has to hurt, that love accepts everything, even contempt. And I didn't want that. Not for me, and much less for him. Then one day I sat down with my husband and said, I don't hate you, but I don't love you anymore either. And what we have here is not family. It's just survival. He was silent. He bowed his head, and he said, I knew it. And right there, in that moment, I felt a peace I hadn't felt in a long time. It was the end of one cycle, and the beginning of another. We officially separated. No scandal, no legal battle. He kept part of the assets, and I kept custody of the boy. He accepted. Maybe he was relieved. Maybe he was too embarrassed to fight. And that's when life decided to test me again. The boy was almost 4 years old. Intelligent, talkative, affectionate. One day, coming back from school, he asked me, Mommy, why don't I have your belly like the other kids have with their mothers? I froze. I didn't expect the question to come so soon. I took a deep breath and told the truth, as sweetly as I could. Because you came from another place. But it was in my heart that you were born. He smiled and answered, Oh, okay, so it was the heart that made me. And he ran off to play. But this innocence doesn't last forever, right? A few months later, his biological mother reappeared, out of the blue. She texted him, said she wanted to see him, said she regretted leaving him, that she now had a different life, that she wanted to reconnect. I read that message with a shaking hand. Anger, fear, jealousy, insecurity, all at once. But also guilt. Because deep down, no matter how much I had raised him, no matter how much he was my son, I knew she still existed, and that maybe, in some corner of his soul, she would exist too one day. I talked to a psychologist, then to a lawyer, and then to him. I sat on the bed, took his little hands and said with all the love I had, There is a woman who wants to see you. She carried you in her belly when you were very small. But it was Mommy here who raised you. And I will never stop being your mother. Never. But I want to know how you feel about this. He looked at me confused, thoughtful, and he answered, Is she you? I said, No. I am me. But she is also part of your story. He was silent, and then he said, Then it could be, but only if you go with me. And that was how, for the first time, the three of us were in the same room. The meeting was strange, cold. She didn't know what to say. He stayed on my lap the whole time. She cried. She asked for forgiveness. She said she didn't have the strength at the time, that she was a coward, that she thought she would never have the courage to look at him. But now she wanted to try. I didn't cry. But inside, I was shaking. I wanted to scream. Now? Now that he knows who his mother is? Now that he has already built a life without you? But I kept quiet. Because I understood that my role there was not that of a betrayed wife, nor that of a hurt woman. It was that of a mother. And mothers do whatever it takes for the good of their children, even if it hurts. The meetings began to happen under supervision. A few minutes, then an hour. And I kept watching. He was affectionate with her, but he always came back to me. He always said, "Let's go home," with a sparkle in his eyes that reminded me every day that I had done the right thing. But of course, not everything is simple. One day, she sent me a long message saying that she wanted shared custody, that she wanted to be recognized as a mother, that she wanted her rightful place. And right there, I felt a rage that burned inside me. Because being a mother is not just giving birth. It is staying up all night. It is taking care of a fever. It is watching a school performance. It is teaching how to ride a bike. It is knowing that the child likes bread without crust and hates warm milk. I answered firmly. Do you want to be recognized as a mother now? After years of absence? I won't let you mess with his head out of whim or guilt. I will fight. And if I have to go all the way, I will. And I went. The hearing has been scheduled. The court needed to hear both sides. You need to decide what was best for the child. And there, in that court, I had to tell everything. From the betrayal to the decision to raise the baby. I cried. But I didn't play the victim. I spoke truthfully, with the soul, like a mother who would give her life for that boy. If you've made it this far, tell me. What would you do if it were me? Would you let this woman come in and claim what she never built? Or would you protect your son until the end? Tell me in the comments. I want to know what you think, really. And if this story is touching your heart, leave a like, share it with someone who needs to hear this. And get ready, because the last part is the most powerful of all. The judge asked for silence in the room. I was holding my lawyer's hand so tightly that I could barely feel my fingers. His biological mother was just a few feet away from me, well-dressed, with makeup on, and giving a rehearsed speech. She said she wanted to make amends. She said she now had stability, that she could give her son a complete life. Those words kept ringing in my head. A complete life. What would a complete life be? A decorated room? A trip once a year? Or would it be affection? The bond built day after day in the silence of routines, in the goodnight kiss, in the small memories that form who the child is. The judge listened to the arguments. He listened to the psychological reports. He listened to the parties. And then, before giving his opinion, he asked to speak with my son, behind closed doors, with a social worker. I stood outside with my heart in my mouth. It was him. He was going to decide. It was the longest 40 minutes of my life. When the door opened, he came out with calm eyes. He saw me, ran and hugged me, and whispered in my ear, "I told you that my home is with you, okay?" I cried. But it was a different kind of cry. It was light. It was a confirmation. I knew that his love for me was real, that he didn't need a genetic explanation to call me mom. Days later, the decision was made. I would continue to have full custody. The biological mother would have the right to monthly visits with supervision. She cried. So did I. Not out of revenge, but out of relief. I wasn't fighting her, I was fighting for him. But that's when life dealt me an even more unexpected blow. Months later, I got a call. She had been in an accident, a serious one. She had been in a coma for days. When she woke up, she couldn't remember anything. Not her son, not me, not her past. Her family came to me and asked for help. They said I was the only person she had any connection with. And do you know what I did? I went. I went because something inside me said that forgiving is also loving, that healing the pain of others, even if they are our tormentors, is a way of healing our own. I spent days in the hospital. I stayed by her side. I helped her with physical therapy, with conversations, with patience. And one day she looked at me and said, "I know you, right?" I smiled and replied, "You made me the strongest woman I know, but not in the way I imagined." Her memory came back slowly, with pain, with guilt, but also with humility. One day, she held my hand and said, "I was selfish. I tried to take what never really belonged to me. You are his mother, and you always will be. I just wanted a chance to forgive myself." That day, something inside me changed. I saw human fragility in the face of our own mistakes. I saw that, even when our hearts bleed, it is possible to look forward with compassion, not as a gesture of superiority, but as a cry for freedom. Today, he is 8 years old. He is a happy, sensitive, intelligent boy. He calls her auntie and calls me mom. Sometimes he asks about the past. And I tell him, little by little, with the care of someone who knows that some truths need to be given with love, not with anger. And do you know the most ironic thing of all? It was this story of betrayal, pain, rejection, and chaos that gave me my greatest blessing. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't change a thing. Not the tears, not the sleepless nights, not the judgments I received. Because all of this made me who I am. A woman who loved so much that she was able to raise the child of betrayal, as if it were flesh of her own body. And perhaps this is what God wants to show us when He allows certain tragedies, that there is love in the midst of abandonment, that there is redemption after shame, and that sometimes being a mother is not about giving birth. It is about choosing to love, even when the whole world says it doesn't make sense. Now I ask you, could you do it? Would you have the courage to raise the child of your husband's lover? Would you have the strength to endure looks, comments, doubts? All of this for a love that was born of pain? If this story touched you, comment here. Tell me what you would do. And please, share this story with someone who needs to hear that true love surpasses blood, pride, and even betrayal. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it now. Because stories like this aren't just meant to entertain, they're meant to transform.